crafters, welcome back to my channel, Margaret Knob Designs. I have been requested from our Christmas Christmas 365. I had shared some ornaments that I had made from looking at some other channels and some other tutorials, and I modified mine just a teeny bit, not much. It's pretty close to the tutorials from the other channels that I did find. So if you want to take a look at tutorials from another channel, the one that I had seen the most was from Sam Calcutt from Mixed Up Craft. And she has an outstanding channel, and I really recommend going to visit her and seeing what other things she's made. She's very inspirational, and I love watching her videos. So I'm going to show you today the same type of ornament, only this is a little bit smaller than the one that she did on her video, and that's only because I like to have a little bit more of the pattern paper in each of the squares. Let me see, do I have one easy here? I made one, yes. Here's one that I made from her tutorial, and you can see that there is a little bit of a difference in size. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit difference, but you can see that there is more spacing around the pattern paper. And not that this isn't pretty, I think it's very pretty, but I just liked it a little bit more covered. And so that's what I'm going to show you how to do today, the little modifications that I've made, and let's get to it. So first of all, what you're going to need is you're going to need either, well, you'll probably need 12 by 12 paper, because the measurements for the 12 by 12 paper, you can get 2 sheets for making this ornament out of one 12 by 12. And what you'll have left over are these 2 pieces, and can be used for something else, whether it's for pattern paper on a card or a belly band on something. So this is basically what you have left over. With the other pattern, and again, this is not to downplay anything, the measurement for the width is 6 1/4, so that I could not get 2 out of a 12 by 12 sheet of paper. That's also the reason why I changed this pattern a little bit, is so I could get 2 and maximize my 12 by 12 solid cardstock. So I'm going to give you the measurements for these as we go through, and the scoring lines. I hope to not go too quickly, but I will give them to you as we go. So first of all, you're going to need cardstock that is 9 1/2 by 5 5/8. This is 9 1/2 by 5 5/8. All right, and then as scoring for it, we are going to then take our, in here to put on our scoreboard. For me, I recommend putting it into the scoreboard rather than using a scoring tool like your cutter, that it has a scoring tool on it. I feel like this gives me a little bit more of an accurate spacing between the numbers, because when I move them on my scoring tool on my cutter, I don't get the exact measurements that I get what's on here. So that's just my little tip and recommendation. So our first score line is going to be at 1 1/8. That's 1 1/8. Next one is 2 1/4. 2 1/4. And then 3 3/8. So this is a quarter, and this is 3. 1 2 3. 3 3/8. And then 4 1/2. Then 5 5/8. So we have a half, that's 4/8. So we go to here, 5/8. 6 3/4. 7 7/8. Oops, that wasn't good. 7 7/8. And then our final score on this side is 9. And this 1/2 inch on this side. This 1/2 inch actually can be 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 inch. You just need to have, you know, a hinge on this end. And then you're going to take this paper and move it so that it's on the 6-inch side at the top, or 5 5/8 side on the top. And you want this small little hinge on the bottom. And we're actually going to go ahead and do the scores that are exactly the same as the first 4 for the long side. So then this one is going to be 1 1/8, 1 1/8, 2 1/4, 3 3/8. Oops, 3 3/8. I almost went to the 5/8. So it's 3 3/8, and then 4 1/2. And the easiest way is just to make sure that you know that you just have to do 4 score lines. So it would be the 4 scores that you did going this way. And the reason why it's that is because these are all square. So that should help with doing that. The next thing that I am going to do before I do anything else is I'm going to put my pattern down on here, and I'm going to mark off the center of my squares that I need to have diamonds in. So 1 2 3 4. Okay, so taking your pattern this way, and you're going to go to the second row of scoring with your hinge on this side, on the right side, and we're going to go over one piece and we're going to mark the center of that square. Now I can give you measurements for that, but quite honestly, if you can eyeball it, it works just as good, because if you're a little bit off, not a lot, but a little bit off, it's really not going to matter that much. So, and I've made several of these ornaments now, so I can speak to things not being accurate sometimes, and you couldn't even tell if it wasn't accurate. Now, if it was way off, that's a whole different thing. So I'm going to go, this is blank, you're going to mark this one, blank, mark this one, blank, mark this one, blank, mark this one. And then I'm going to turn this around, and if you look at where this pencil mark is, or this pencil mark is, if you go, you skip one and you go to the next square. See, we did this on the top before, but now we're going to do it on the top of here because we turned it around. And then here, turn it around, and then on this one. And all of these marks, every other one, will match up with every other one for the top, because what we're marking off is these diamonds. So the next thing that I'm going to do with this, I'm putting it back again so I have the hinge on this side, is we're going to do some cutting. And what we're going to do is you can see our first mark is right here. I am going to cut off this piece, this little piece here, and this piece right here. And I'll show you what we're going to do. And I'm also going to cut the score line away. And then I'm going to turn this and I'm going to cut down here. And then we're going to continue on the rest of this piece. We are going to then cut the line. We're going to cut the scoring line down to the first score line here, leaving the score line with this piece. We want to, where it's marked, we can put it to the inside there. It's better. If you don't do that, it's not going to be a problem for anybody. But so then we're going to cut down all of these lines. And if I cut them all down to the first score line here. Oh, I should have cut that. I'm trying to cut the score lines so they go with the marked, where the mark is. and then leave these a little bit better looking. So then we've got this like this. So I'm going to then, as you can see here, we cut away this and this one. That's where we've got it marked. We're going to bend this one down, and we're going to cut this one away. So every cell or square that has a mark in it, we are going to cut away the tab that's at the top of that. And the reason for that is because it's going to make those diamond or triangle, not diamond, but triangle squares. So I do this, so I cut them along, and I put them down as I cut them, the ones that don't need to be cut. So then if we hold this up, we can see we've got 4 tabs going across. So in the first row, we've got a tab above. This is where a triangle is going. Tab above, triangle, tab above, triangle, tab above, triangle, hinge. Okay, now we're going to turn this around, and we're going to do it exactly the same way, only for this bottom part of this this plan. So what we're going to do is, we can see that there is no triangle or no pencil mark in this cell right here. So this has to stay. So that's a little bit different than where we did on this side, where we cut away the tab and the square top. So what I'm going to do to make it easier for me is, I'm just going to cut the whole first row of this. And I am leaving the score line with the tab that is getting cut out. So I'm going to go down on all of these to make them able to be cut out. And I'll show you, I'm going to hold this up when I get this row done. Okay, so what I'm talking about is this. I'm trying to keep this tab a little bit cleaner, where, let me find one that's really more evident. And this one, you can see, has some of the score on the pattern. So now we're going to come back, and this does not have a pencil mark on it, so I'm putting it down, and I'm going to cut the score mark off of this one. This one I'm putting down, this one I'm cutting off. Putting this one down, I'm cutting this one off. Putting this one down, and now I'm going to cut this one off and our little tab for there, because we're not going to need it for this part. So we're cutting that all the way off. So if you look at your pattern, when you have it done, this is how it's going to look. It's going to look, you have a tab, skip, tab, skip, tab, skip, tab, skip. The ones that do not have the tab at the top are always the triangle square, the one that's going to be made into a triangle. So that should not have a tab above it. That's the easiest way for me to remember when I was going through this. And then these are our leftovers from cutting those out, and I'm just going to toss them. If they were perfect squares, I probably would keep them and do something with them, but I'm not going to. So the next thing that we need to do is to score and mark on this pattern for where our triangles are going to go. So what I like to do with that is I take one of my rulers, and I try to do these so that I'm doing it all the way across, and then I come back and go this way. So how I do that, I know this is going to sound ridiculous. I don't have a scoring tool that makes great indents. So I do have this, and I'm not telling you to go out and buy it. This is a screwdriver. It's a Phillips screwdriver, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but it gives me a real nice pointy mark on my cardstock without ripping it. So I wanted to try something new. So the other day when I was making these, I thought, let me just try this. So that's what I'm using. If you have a scoring tool that is works well, you know, I have the Teflon one. I have a small ball one as well, those ones for doing flowers, but I just feel like this gives me a better mark on my, because I've tried everything. So what I do is, this is where my pencil mark is. So I put my scoring tool right to the pencil mark, and then I put it to the angle of the corner. And what I do is I like to go down and do that angle on all my squares before I go back the other way. And again, like I said before, you know, as long as you're pretty close to where you want it to be and you're not missing it too much, you're perfectly okay. You don't have to worry that it isn't perfection to the corner. Granted, like I said, you don't want it way off, but you don't have to make it worry that you didn't get it perfectly. So now I'm going to just score going back the other way and through here. This is just easier for me. You can do both at the same time. I just feel more comfortable doing this because I'm kind of angling my ruler the same way. What I really would like, and I need to get, is to get a smaller ruler. I like one that's a little bit shorter for something like this, but I don't have one. So each time here I'm going to the pencil mark, putting my scoring tool down, and then my ruler going to the corner of the square. I don't know if you can see those score marks. Then I'm going to turn this around and do exactly the same thing on this spot down here. The purpose of this is to put our score lines in so we can make our triangles. Once you've made one or two, it'll be so easy. You'll be like, because I know when I first made this, for some reason I got very confused, and I ended up putting my tabs over where the triangles were rather than the other side of it. Yeah, I don't know. Must be my hearing. Because she explained it correctly. I just heard it wrong. Okay, so now that I have all of those scored, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to burnish all my score lines. So I first of all go through here and I burnish along. I know I said in the other video, but I also use like an 80-pound, 85-pound at the most, but 65-pound can work as well for your cardstock. For this ornament, I would not go higher than that because you'll have difficulty in folding and bending, or at least I did. So I tried some like 110-pound cardstock and it was just way too heavy. So now that we've got those burnished, we're going to go down here and we're going to burnish along all of these score lines. One of the things that I want to tell you is that because we're doing all this burnishing of the score lines, by the time we're done, and it's not put together yet, but it's just done with all the burnishing, the ornament can look a little messy. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, how is that ever going to look nice? But it does, and it works out just fine. The only thing that I would encourage you that you look for cardstock or or if you have a good pattern paper, you could even do it that way, and the whole thing is then patterned. But I find a lot of times with a lot of pattern papers that they you'll see the white core. Now I'm going to just burnish these tabs along here. And I need to do that and make sure my tabs are straight. And the reason for that is because this is, again, a little bit thicker cardstock. It's not overly thick, but it's a little thick. And I want to make sure that these are laying down flat and in, see, some of them I'm pulling over here. So we've got everything all burnished down, and so we're going to come back around to this side. Now that we have it burnished on all sides, what we're going to do is now burnish our triangle lines. So I'm going to come in, I usually start on this side with this little flap, and you want to fold those so that the triangle goes to the inside. And I just fold them enough so that they will move more easily for when I'm putting everything together. So I do all of this. And it's important to do this because I've done it both ways where I forgot to actually burnish the triangles or fold them in, and it was not impossible, but it was kind of difficult in trying to get it to fold exactly the way I wanted it to fold. Then you come back and you're going to do the ones on the bottom. And then once you've got those folded, that'll help with putting the whole ornament together. So we're going to continue to do that with the whole ornament, going all the way down. If you have pencil lines in here, you can go ahead and erase them. Mine are so teeny that they're going to be way up inside this, so I'm not going to worry about that. If they were bigger, I would take my eraser. So now we're all set with that, like that. So what we're going to do is put it together. So I'm going to fold this end in. This is with the tab end, and get my heart glitter glue. I want to make sure that I'm got these burnished straight. So, and pull this over, making sure that it doesn't go over that score line. And then you've got this put together like this. So what I like to do, or what I found that has worked best, is to do my punching for the top of the ornament before I put everything together. So what I like to use is I like to use the smaller hole on my crocodile, and I then put this piece to just beyond, I don't know if you can see that little score line in there. And that way I get it as close as I can to depth-wise on my tabs. They're not perfect, but again, the one thing that I found is when I'm putting ribbon on these ornaments, you know, if you glue the tops down, they stay really nice and square. If you use a ribbon, because you want to be able to open it, they're not going to stay perfectly square. And quite honestly, as you go along, you're really not going to notice that it's, I mean, you might notice it, but no one else is really going to look at it and go, gosh, that's not perfectly put together. So I have, and little Miss Perfection that I am, not that I do everything perfect, I just always feel like it needs to be perfect. This is the way I found was the simplest. So again, this is using the 1/8 inch hole, a smaller hole on my crocodile. And then on the crocodile edge here, there is 1, 2, 3 lines This black piece goes right after that second line. And that's where I find the depth of this, getting it more all to the center. And we'll see more of that as we go. So then once I've done that, I then pull everything out and I start off by gluing my bottom down. Now you can do one of two things. You can glue your bottom down and then put your papers on here. Actually, I usually do this when this is flat, but I got ahead of myself. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my papers on here while it's still flat, and it'll make things a little bit easier. So you can either do it like this, you can do it when it's all put together, or you can do it, you know, all the way flat out. Just, you'll know which ones you're gonna put them on because they're the ones that don't have the triangles. So I punched out about 17 of these squares, 17, 18 of these squares. I used my 1-inch punch by EK Success, and this is really heaven for doing these. I don't know if you saw my Easter eggs that I had also learned from Sam Calcutt. That was the only thing about those is that I had to cut each one individually, which really was a pain in the rear, but they still turned out really cute. But this is great. With this, it goes so fast. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to put down my little squares on all the open square pieces, and just try to get them as centered as I can. So I'll show you in each row, like the first row, there's 4 squares that are going to go down. And this row, there's going to be, I think it's 8 all the way across. It's all the way across and around. These are like every other one. Same thing down in the bottom, it's every other one. So sometimes I will go and just put my glue on like that, and sometimes I put it on my paper. Depends upon how fast I want to go or need to go. So I am going to go ahead and finish putting the paper on, and I will speed this up, so I'll be back with you in a moment. So now we have all of our squares put onto our little ornament. I'm shy 1 or 2. Thought I had them all up there. And when I say 1 or 2, it's really up to you how you want to do these. If you want to put one on the bottom and on the top. But you can make that decision as you go. I decided that I like it on the bottom and the top. There's a couple that I didn't, and a couple I did put it on. But so let's go ahead and put this the bottom together. When I put the bottom together, I do the 2 across from each other, and I get out my reverse tweezers because that is a great tool for holding this together and keeping them even. So I'm just going to put glue on the bottom of one of my tabs, or the top of this tab, not the bottom. And I just put this together so that they are firmly together, and then I use my reverse tweezers to stick this a little bit more permanently down. And you can, even if yours isn't too tight, mine isn't overly tight, I use it to kind of burnish that a little bit. And that seems to work pretty good. So then we've got that down. So then what we're going to do is go ahead and push these sides in. And by pushing those sides in, I'm then going to put some glue down on here. And again, this is our bottom, so we don't have to put any ribbon or anything on it. Unless, of course, you want to put some ribbon all the way through and have a tassel hanging out the bottom, you can also do that. But this, to me, is going to be a little gifty thing at Christmas that people can open with something little in it. So then I put the other one down. And for me, it doesn't matter which way or which side I do them, but I'm going to go ahead and put my pattern paper down on the bottom here as well. Now, if you have directional paper, watch that for how you're cutting it. But I try to use ones that really aren't directional, as I did this one. But this one I just made sure that I cut them all straight. So otherwise I don't use directional. That's an easy enough one. So now we're at the top. What do we do at the top? We have all of these that need to get glued in or tied in. So what I've done is I take my ribbon or a cord, or for this I have some, I wish I had here, I have some darker ribbon. All of this has been bought at Country Craft Creations, my seam binding. And so what I do is I take this and I get a length about 12 inches. And if that's too long for you, you can always adjust, but I find that that's a good length for me. I'd rather have it just a little bit longer than too short. Makes it easier to tie. So then what I do is I come in and I make a knot in the bottom of this, tying, splitting it in half and then tying the two pieces at the bottom in a knot. I pull it pretty tight, but we've got a little bit of that. But if you see that these holes are pretty small, so we try to, the knot will be good at that size. And then what I do is I start off with putting this together, and I'm going to do it again the way I did it before. I'm going to put this one and then go to this one. I'm going oops, and I have to start to the inside of my little holes. Now these are tiny, so I find that you have to get like an edge of the ribbon in there, or I come along and I take my reverse tweezers and I poke it through a little corner of it and then pull it the rest of the way through. And now I'm going to go back and I'm going to put this one in here and pull that one through, and I'm going to pull that through and pull that tight. And same thing with this one. Push that through, and just so I can grab it. If you have threading tools, that works good too. You can use that to pull this all together. And you have to start off by pulling it tight enough so that it stays pretty sturdy for what you're doing. But once you get this all together, it'll make things a lot easier. If I want to put paper on the top, I usually do it at this point because of so I can get my ribbon through it rather than doing it afterwards. And the hardest part for me on this one though is trying to get it where the hole is. And I hold it sideways and try to see through. And so I've got my hole pretty close. It's not exact, but it's pretty close. This is, for me, this is so heavy to hold that I sometimes don't get my, it kind of wiggles as I'm closing it. So then I've got that hole through that piece, the hole through this, And I'm going to go ahead and continue to make this pull up on each one of these strands so that each one comes up equally. And if you look at the top, it's not perfect as you go, but the truth is who's going to notice that? Who's going to really worry about that? Especially if there's some candies or some things in here. Now, there's also a couple other things that you can do. You can embellish some of these squares. You can do that with some diamonds or, you know, some little gems. You can put some holly and ivy on there. One ornament that I made, I used holly and ivy, and I left it to be able to be opened, but then I glued it together with my ribbon, so I'm not sure this is going to open. I haven't really tried it yet. But this, you can see where I put some gems, and I put some leaves along here and just kind of alternated where I put them. I just wanted to try something different, but you know, there's a lot of things you can do, or make one part of your ornament the front where you can put some special embellishments on it. But this is the one that's a little bit bigger, and then this is the size that I made that makes it about, I'm calling this a medium size, because the ones for the eggs are really more of a small size. And here's what one of the eggs look like. And these I glued all of these shut. Now that I know how I did it for the ornaments, I think I might be able to get away with not having to glue them all shut, but there's a little egg in there. So they were fun favors for everybody. And that pattern, you can also find the eggs. You can find them on my channel, but I also recommend you go to Sam's channel because she also had done a tutorial on those. And there's also another crafter that she mentions that did the tutorial on it. I'm not sure of that crafter's name, but check them out because it's always fun to share. And that's what we do in crafting, is share our projects, but make sure we give credit to those we saw did it first. So there is my ornament for today, and you can see the other 3 ornaments that I have. They're all very Christmas appropriate, and been thinking about things for work as far as to give, you know, my associates gifts, and maybe I'll be doing these because these are even faster to do than the little bowls that I had made before. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you spending your time with me, and I hope that you learned something today, that I was able to do that. But please click the subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, but it does let you know when another video comes up. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye.